I think that's the toughest part about collecting in this space. It's kind of similar to like technology. Like there's always going to be something new, and if you collect for like the retro scene, then the modern scene is always just going to be pumping out new stuff that eventually becomes the old stuff. And it's like, well, as a collector, what's next? How's it going, gamers? Welcome to the dojo. Today we're talking yet again about video collecting, and more specifically, what's next for me. Don't worry, not moving on for the hobby or anything like that. If anything, gearing up for what is going to be the next focus for me in this hobby that is video game collecting. You see, when I got into this hobby, like many who collect or have ever collected for anything, not just video games, I am somebody who just goes all in and kind of goes down the rabbit hole of the thing that I'm into. And like the many other things I've collected for in the past or do currently, I think a big part of that journey as a collector is understanding and curating and constantly redefining what makes your collection for you. And again, I think in the beginning, a lot of that is quantity based versus quality based, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't like. And you got to kind of accrue things to kind of understand. And sometimes things are based on trends or what's new and popular versus, things that you're maybe really into. And again, to each their own, because like I've talked about in a previous video, there's no wrong or right way to collect. But for me, I've been fortunate to collect a lot of various things around the video game scene, both retro and modern, over time. And it wasn't until I recently, about a year and plus ago, set out to have an actual goal in mind of getting the complete Nintendo 64 NA library and then eventually the JP library. A couple months ago, I completed that North American library set. So a lot of what I've been asking myself is, what's next? More specifically, because a couple weeks from now, I'm going to be going down to the SoCal Gaming Convention hosted by the folks at Pixel Gaming Squad ever since they took ownership. I was very fortunate enough to go last year for the first time since they relaunched it and rehauled it, and meet a ton of great people that I knew across the scene or followed across the scene, meet a lot of local vendors that I've met and been to their stores. And just, it's the first time I've gone to an event of that scale since being in the hobby. I've gone to a lot of local game swaps and game stores, but that SoCal Gaming Expo was the first time I got to experience like a convention or a proper conference. And it was a ton of fun. And it was really cool to meet so many different people, see so many vendors. And as an enthusiast and somebody who's a collector of the space, like you're like a kid in the candy store. There's just so many things you never knew you wanted, things you never knew existed. And like if you have grails, they're usually going to be at events like that. And you can find a lot of different things across the hobby and what you might be interested in. But for me, last year, it was a lot about collecting and completing that Nintendo 64 set. It's where I actually picked up this grail for the Nintendo 64 collection, Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut, where I was able to collect a lot of those high-end pieces that I've been wanting all in one place for my Nintendo 64 library. Going in this year, I've been asking myself, a lot of people who know I'm going have been asking myself, I've talked to even some vendors, what are you looking for next? And the truth of it is I don't know, and it's why I'm making this video now, to hopefully crowdsource some ideas before I fly down there in a couple weeks. Because ever since collecting, or completing that last collection, I've honestly just been trying to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I've been playing a lot of games on my backlog. I've been doing some completionist aspect of certain games and trying to get all the achievements in some of the games that have come out, both modern and retro, as of late. And as always, gamers can relate that there's still a ton of games I've yet to play. It makes it hard when you're also a collector of games. I have games that are quite literally sitting in their shrink wrap still because I've yet to open it because I want to open it when I'm actually going to play it. And like many of you who maybe play on like PC, I have like an endless series of Steam backlog games that I always buy on sale that I never get to. So I've been trying to enjoy the things that I've collected as of late or just bought as of late. But what's been ticking in the back of my head, that itch to what do I want to collect for next? And I've thought about this like after completing the N64 set. I truly enjoyed completing the N64 set and collecting for it because one, it just had so much amount of nostalgia being the first console I ever owned, and like just getting to relive some of those memories, get some of those games, get some like the boxes, and just like took me back, right? A lot of it was nostalgia based. Outside of that, I think that complete sets and like that level of collecting or that method of collecting is a little bit more like psychologically tuned for who I am as like a checklist person. Like I love just having like a goal in mind and knowing I just have to check this box off and complete it, and it makes it much easier. But I've also just toyed around with the idea of like, do I want to go for another, I don't know, complete set again? Do I want to do like a GameCube complete set for a console that I never had growing up, but always like loved playing at friends' houses? Do I want to go for a more daunting set like the PlayStation 2 library, which is quite literally, I believe, in the thousands, right? Because the PlayStation 2 outside the N64 arguably had the same amount of nostalgia, if not more, because it was the console that I really like grew up with, in the sense that I was a teenager and I played that for a long time before getting into PC gaming. It was the first console I got modded when I was in the Philippines, I remember. I just had so many games for the PlayStation 2, again, because the library was so big. So a lot of my core gaming memories and like the series that I enjoy and collect for now or play for now started on the PlayStation 2. So there's like a level of attachment there. But there's also ideas of like subgenres of collecting. Like, do I want to dive more into the horror realm and collect games for the horror subgenre? Do I want to go specific to series, like add on to my Zelda collection or add on to my Final Fantasy set of collections? Because like that can kind of range the gamut of not just games but accessories, handheld, special editions, things like that. And here's the thing, as you do as a collector, and as I've clearly kind of shown here so far, you don't have to just focus on one thing. I think focusing on one thing kind of makes it easier, and if you're like working with a specific budget, it helps you stay on track. But clearly, and one of the things that have helped me stay in this hobby for the last couple of years is kind of having these mini side quests and side lanes you can kind of dive down, because it keeps it refreshing, keeps it new. But like I said, I've historically collected different things over time. I've gotten games that I know are big in the gaming scene as a whole. Games like Mother. This is the CIB copy for the Famicom that I got in Japan on my most recent trip back home. And I got this because I understood the place it has for like gamer nostalgia, and just it was a really cool thing to have in the collection. But admittedly, I've also come to terms with like, this is not a game I played a lot growing up, or at all growing up, truthfully speaking. I learned about NES when it came to Super Smash Brothers, and I never knew the original game that he came from back then. So while I value it as a collector, I also understand that like I'm not the right audience for that, and it sits on my shelf versus somebody who probably appreciates it more than I do, and has that level of nostalgia for it. Not to say you can't collect something because you never played it. I think there's different aspects to it, but I've also done niche things. Like I've gotten games like Def Jam Rap Star for the PlayStation 3 and it's shrink wrap, because I thought this would be a funny video to do and have for a video on YouTube as like a collector. And there's a little bit of that like content pilled brain in me, where not only am I a collector, not only am I a gamer, but I'm also a content creator, and I've done this for a living for over a couple of decades. And I kind of at times accrue things or rare or weird niche items, because I know that like at the same time it'd be fun to kind of do a video on it. And then there's other subgenres like modded consoles and that rabbit hole that I've gone down, because it kind of pairs my hobby and interest of gaming with like technology and getting to solder things and put things together, like a Raspberry Pico mod for this GameCube. So all of these things I've thought about, all of these things I've kind of dabbled with the idea of like really diving into, like, do I want to get another complete set and go that route because it's what I know that I enjoy and I'm kind of good at. But at the same time, I'm trying to balance it out. Like, the thing with sets, understandably, is like it's easier for me to collect because it's just very methodical and it's a strategic approach to it. But I'm not getting to enjoy the things I collect as much, because like there's a balance of like collecting them and wanting to play them and enjoy them in the moment, but getting caught up in the hamster wheel of like obviously collecting for it. And then I think when you focus on a more specific subset or genre of things, you can enjoy it more. Because you're not as focused on like the sheer amount of like quantity of things out there and items and just things that are out there for it, right? So I don't know. There's a lot of ideas floating in my head, but I think PlayStation 2, if I was to go for a set, would be a very daunting one, but kind of exciting one at the same time. It's not something that I could remotely challenge myself to complete as a library as a gamer, because unlike the Nintendo 64 library, I think it's much more digestible versus thousands plus. I just transparently don't have the time to dedicate to that. So collecting would be the best I could do versus completing that library. But I pose this question out to you. What are your approach? What are your thoughts? What are you collecting for right now? Maybe you're in different phases. Maybe you're in the discovery phase. Maybe you're in the refinement phase. Maybe you have a very specific niche that you collect for. Like maybe you only collect for a certain subgenre of like games by a specific publisher or developer. Who knows? Love to hear your thoughts, opinions. I think it's all going to help me kind of cultivate where I go next, and we'll see in a couple weeks from now what I end up coming back with. So gamers, as always, thanks for watching.